synoptic vision of the interrelation of all truths to each other. I'm going to say that again. That synoptic vision of the interrelation of all truths to each other. By the time he is 18, he would have been training in literature, music, and elementary mathematics. His literature would be censored, for Plato accused certain poets of outright falsehood and of impious accounts of the behavior of the gods. Music would also be prescribed, so that seductive music would be replaced by a more wholesome variety. I think he meant Billy Woods when he was writing this. For the next few years, there would be extensive physical and military training, and at the age of 20, a few would be selected to pursue an advanced course in mathematics. At age 30, a 5-year course in dialectic and moral philosophy would begin. The next 15 years would be spent gathering practical experience through public service. Finally, at age 50, the ablest person would reach the highest level of knowledge, the vision of the good, and would be then ready for the task of governing the estate. Or the state, sorry, not the estate. He also believed that the human race will not be free of evils until either the stock of those who are rightly and truly follow philosophy acquire political authority, or the class who have the power in the cities have led. He also believed that the human race will not be free of evils until either the stock of those who rightly and truly follow philosophy. He also believed the human race will He also believed that the human race will not be free of evils until either the stock of those who rightly and truly follow philosophy acquire political authority, or the class who have power in the cities be led by some divine intervention to become real philosophers. Justice in the state can be attained only if the three classes fulfill their functions. Courage means knowing what to fear and what not to fear. The only real object of fear for the guardian should be fear of moral evil. He must never fear poverty or privation, and for this reason this type of life should be isolated from possessions. This being the case, they should both be assigned to the same task whenever they possess the appropriate talent. For this reason, Plato believed that both men and women could be guardians. Plato's reasoning was the guardians must be free not only from the temptation to acquire property, but also from the temptation to prefer the advantages. Plato's reasoning here was that the guardians must be free from not only the temptation to acquire property, but also from the temptation to prefer the advantages of one's family to those of the state. Moreover, he thought it was foolish to take such pains in breeding racing dogs and horses, and at the same time rely on pure chance in producing the guardians and rulers of the state. For this reason, sexual relations would be strictly controlled and would be limited to the special marriage festivals. These festivals would occur at stated times, and the partners, under the illusion that they had been paired by drawing lots, would instead be brought together through the careful manipulation of the rulers to ensure the highest eugenic possibilities. Plato does say that young men who performed well in war and other duties should be given, among other rewards and privileges, more liberal opportunities to sleep with a wife, but only for the practical purpose that with good excuse as many as possible of the children may be born of such fathers. That's a weird one a little bit. I don't know about nothing with the wife thing, but I have always believed those who work the hardest get to play the hardest or laugh the loudest, right? Like I love that philosophy. Work hard, laugh loud. Giggle. My voice is all fucked up, so I can't really giggle right now, but I would be. All right. Justice in the state is therefore the same as justice in the individual. Justice is the harmony of the virtues of temperance, courage, and wisdom. I'll say that again. Justice is the harmony of the virtues of temperance, courage, and wisdom. For example, even craftspeople must have the For example, even craftspeople must have the virtue of wisdom, not only to keep their appetites in check, but also to know that they rightly belong where they are and must obey the rules. The guardians must have sufficient wisdom to know what to fear and what not to fear, so that they can develop genuine courage. More importantly, the ruler must come as close as possible to a knowledge of the good, for the well-being of the state depends on the ruler's knowledge and character. Now, the decline of the ideal state. Okay? The decline. Plato argued that if a state were a giant person, then it would reflect the kind of people a community has become. What he had in mind was that although human nature is fixed and that all people possess a tripartite soul, the kind of people they become will depend on the degree of internal harmony they achieve. The state will therefore reflect these variations in human character. For this reason, Plato argued that constitutions cannot come out of sticks and stones. They must result from the preponderance of certain characters which draw the rest of the community in their wake. So if there are 5 forms of government, there must be 5 kinds of mental constitution among individuals. And these 5 forms of government are aristocracy, right? Aristocracy, timocracy, plutocracy, democracy, and despotism. Plato considered the transition from aristocracy to despotism as a step-by-step decline in the quality of the state corresponding to a gradual deterioration of the moral character of rulers and citizens. His ideal state was an aristocracy, in which the rational element embodied in the philosopher king was supreme, and in which people's reason controlled their appetites. Control their appetites. Now we talk about the way it downgrades. Even if this ideal state were achieved, however, there would be a possibility for change, since nothing is permanent. And aristocracy would decline, first of all, into a timocracy. This represents a degeneration, for a timocracy represents the love of honor, and insofar as ambitious members of the ruling class love their own honor more than the common good, the spirited part of the soul is usurped the role of reason. Although there is only a small break in the structure of the soul, it does begin a process whereby the irrational part assumes a progressively larger one. It is a short step from love of honor to the desire for wealth, which means allowing the appetites to rule. Even under a timocracy, there would be the beginning of a system of private property, and the desire for riches paves the way for a system of government called plutocracy, in which power resides in the hands of people whose main concern is wealth. And Plato says, as the rich in the social esteem, the virtuous sink. What is problematic about plutocracy, according to Plato, is that it breaks the unity of the state into 2 contending classes, the rich and the poor. Moreover, plutocrats are consumers of goods. And when they have used up their money, they become dangerous because they want more of what they have. They've become accustomed to it. The plutocrat is like the person who seeks constant pleasure, but the very nature of pleasure is that it is momentary and must therefore be repeated. There can never be a time of perfect satisfaction. The seeker of pleasure can never be satisfied any more than a leaky pail can be filled. Still, the plutocrat knows how to distinguish 3 sorts of appetites: the necessary, the desires, and the lawless. and so is torn between many desires. His better desires will usually keep the upper hand over the worse, and so the plutocrat, Pluto says, presents a more decent appearance than many.
I think I have to warn them. I do too. Roll on some deodorant and we'll head out. I need to figure out how.
Democracy is a further degeneration. Plato says that for the principles of equality and freedom reflect the degenerated democracy is a further degeneration. Plato said, for its principles of equality and freedom reflect the degenerate human characters whose whole range of appetites are all pursued with equal freedom. To be sure, Plato's concept of democracy and his criticism of it were based on his first-hand experience with the special form that democracy took in the city of Athens. Here, democracy was direct in that all citizens had the right to participate in the government. The Athenian assembly consisted, theoretically at least, of all citizens over 18 years of age. Thus, Plato did not have in mind modern liberal and representative democracy. What he saw in his day was rather a type of direct popular government that clearly violated his notion that the rulership of a state should be in the hands of those with special talent and training for it. What produced this spirit of equality was the gradual legitimizing of all the appetites under the plutocracy by the sons of the more restrained father plutocrats, whereby the aim of life was to become as rich as possible. And said Plato, this insatiable craving would bring about the transition to democracy. For a society cannot hold wealth and honor and at the same time establish self-control in its citizens. Even the dogs in the democracy exhibit equality and independence. By even the dogs, let me go back, hang on, I'm sorry. Even the dogs in the democracy exhibit equality and independence by refusing to move out of the way in the streets. It is, however, when the rich and poor find themselves in a contest under plutocracy that the turning point is reached. For when the poor win, the result is democracy. Then liberty and free speech are rife everywhere. Anyone is allowed to do what he likes. Now you are not obliged to be in authority or to submit to authority. If you do not like it, all this political equality and freedom stem from a soul whose order has been shattered. It is a soul whose appetites are now all equal and free and act as a mob of passions. The life of liberty and equality declares that one appetite is as good as another, and all must have their equal rights. But the continuous indulgence of the appetites leads inevitably to the point at which a single master passion will finally enslave the soul. We cannot yield to every craving without finally having to yield to the strongest and most persistent passion. At this point, we say that we are under the tyranny of our master passion. Likewise, the state. The passion for money and pleasure leads the masses to plunder the rich. As the rich resist, the masses seek out a stronger person who will be their champion. But this person demands and acquires absolute power and makes slaves of the people. And only later do the people realize to what depths of subjugation they have fallen. This is the unjust society, the enlargement of the unjust soul. The natural end of democracy is despotism. Now, Despotism, right? Some might not know what that word means. I understand that. So, despotism. Now, as we recall, Plato said the degeneration of democracy is despotism. Despotism is the exercise of absolute power, especially in a cruel and oppressive way. Despotism is the exercise of absolute power, especially in a cruel and a oppressive way. I just don't know. It just seems like there's cycles of society. I know there was a man, I forget his name, but was speaking about it and how basically FDR like started the beginning of the empire, and that's like or not the empire but the cycle. I have to look more into that, but I do find that like with everything else in nature, things have cycles. I don't think it's anything that unique, but I think it's hard for people to grasp when we're talking about, societies and the way we live our life and things like that, because it just seems like something that's so immalleable, when in reality it's probably one of the most malleable things in the world. Change is not for sure a slow shift. Shout out Elucid, Armand Hammer, Billy Woods, always putting in logic and knowledge, and it's absolutely necessary. We are living in a society deeply saturated with nothing of the sort, and we love it, and it's scary, guys. It's scary. And not even as scary like, oh my gosh, it's just scary that you don't see you doing it. That's what it is. It's like if you saw you doing it and we're like, oh, yeah, I did, all right, different. But you take the step after the step after the step after the step, not knowing nothing. And so basically, one thing, I think a big way to not battle this, I don't want to use that terminology at all because that's not what this is, right? Not yet, I guess, right? It could be, maybe. Apologize. The scholar athlete. Alright, so I'll just Google real quick scholar athlete, because that's basically what Plato believed to be the highest form of an individual within a society. And I mean, hey, I think he was onto something with this one. Because again, you can't be too tilted on one side. You have to have kind of an equal distribution of both. And so, I apologize, I'm sick, but and this light just keeps getting brighter and brighter, and I'm sorry. So Plato believed that the ideal citizen was a scholar athlete, someone who was both physically strong and intellectually curious. He believed that the ideal person was a balance of the two, and the being only one or the other was not ideal. Plato believed that an educated Greek should find harmony in. So, as I discussed earlier, Plato believed that there was not like a perfect person, but Friedrich Nietzsche talks about the Übermensch. synonyms to that are like paragon, like anything of the highest quality, something to look after, right? It's not anything about master race or anything. It's just qualities, striving to be the highest quality of what you can be. And we don't have qualities anymore. We're not characters. We're these like 3D printed versions of things we've seen online and shit. And it's like we need to start developing skill sets and qualities about ourselves to make us interesting individuals and to continue. Period. Plato believed that the ideal citizen was a scholar athlete, someone who was both physically strong and intellectually curious. He believed that the ideal person was a balance of the two, and that only being one or the other was not ideal. Plato believed that an educated Greek should find harmony between their body and mind through athletic contests. He also believed that the heroic life was an athletic life, and that it could be achieved through self-discipline and commitment. Plato was an athlete himself before becoming a philosopher. He was a wrestler who competed in the Isthmian Games. Now, I've been saying this for a while with Olympic weightlifting, because it's like what I'm doing is not Olympic weightlifting. I'm traveling. I don't know if you want to call it transcending, meditating, flow state, whatever you want to call it. There's a break of consciousness, and in that break of consciousness, I exist somewhere where I'm physically not present. And that's an important place to continuously return to, get comfortable in, explore more of. And I'm trying to help people see that. You can't make anybody put on the glasses, and I know that. But you can lead them down the path where they hopefully find the same clues or find clues of their own that lead them to that, right? Because like when people talk about how did I get here, how did I get there, they want a point A, B, C, D, E, F, G, when it's you have to operate off of these certain principles, like these meta principles, and by operating off of these meta principles, you will arrive at these points A, B through C, D, E, F, G, all that, right? But if you're not having those principles to start, you could go through points A to G, even to fucking Z, and wouldn't understand what those were, or you weren't able to take full advantage of those points because you didn't know what you were doing. And so fully exploring life and understanding it inside out, not outside in. We can do this. We can do this. We just gotta start. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do today? What are you gonna do tomorrow? Tell yourself. Tell yourself. And then at the end of the day, ask yourself, did I do that? Did I do that thing? Did I do that? And if you didn't, start making it make yourself feel guilty. Because it needs to. You lied to yourself, you let yourself down. You told yourself you're gonna do something, you didn't do it. I do it. Right? It's a forever practice. But if Eric Thomas is a great motivational speaker who says, if you do what you say 70% of the time, you're average. If you do, Eric Thomas is a motivational speaker who says, if you do what you do 70% of the time, you're average. If you do what you say 80% of the times, you're really good. If you do what you say 90% of the time, you're great. It's all it takes. Say what you're going to do. Go out and do it. Conor McGregor showed everybody that, right? We all saw that. Go watch Undisputed. Go watch the documentary. Go watch the film crew following him around before he blew up, with him and his girlfriend driving home from the gym with nothing, and his girl saying, yeah, we're going to make it one day, though. Understand what that is. That's not arrogance. That's an understanding of the way things are and work. That's all I have to say for tonight. I like this Lil Peep song, man. This is a nice little sweatshirt I got. It says East Hampton. That's a little bicycle. I got one on Long Island. I love shit like this. I will always wear shirts and hoodies and coats and things that I just half my stuff's like from my grandfather, and not even for like the style, just because of the lived-in factor. Like, what memories did he make in that? I want to make memories in it now. You know, like, I think that's a beautiful thing about clothing. I don't know why. That's something that's always like really drawn me to clothing, is like giving it another story that it wouldn't have had previously. I just think we need to get out of this "it's not that deep" mentality. I think it's a virus that's gotten into a lot of us, you know, under the ages of 30 and shit. I think it's just really gotten to us. It does matter, man. It matters a lot. It matters more than it probably ever has, because right now, humans aren't really at the top no more. And we kind of have to show our value to stay, I think, at this point in the near future. Like, we need to develop ourselves. We need to be physically fit, intellectually fit, socially fit, emotionally fit, psychologically, physiologically. We need to invest in ourselves.